I mean, it was funny. So we were talking off camera about Newtonic, right? What do you think about them?
I think they're a really great example of a modern, fast growth brand in the functional beverage space. It's influencer led, and I think that Chris and James, they know this space so well. They understand the influence that they've got, and I think the audiences that they've built up are so relevant to the products. I think that a lot of influencer led brands and products are like a afterthought, and they're like a cash grab at trying to monetize an audience after the fact. And I think that it's such a great example of a product that's really aligned with what they represent.
Yeah.
They are entrepreneurs, they're business people, they built all of their media around helping people do their best work and really understand themselves, and they provide such an enormous amount of value around that as an ecosystem. Yeah. And then they've released products that supplement those things. And I think that a lot of products exist the other way around, which is we want to sell you something and we're going to do the bare minimum to convince you. And they've built up so much goodwill with a relevant audience with so much value. And the products just complement that ecosystem. I think that's what they do so well.
Well, we were joking about kind of looking at their offer and how they offer their podcast like a free exclusive episode. I think they said it was worth £20, which I think is just fantastic. I mean, how important is it for kind of early D2C brands to not only get the right offer in place, but find a unique offer that no one else can?
Yeah, I think that commerce, D2C, e-commerce is, a lot of people view it as a very saturated space. And I think ultimately it is going to be a sea of average and normal. And ultimately, with platforms like Shopify making the barrier to entry so low, you can have a product page and a website very easily. And I think fundamentally, to stand out, you have to put yourself in a category of one, and to represent to prospects and to customers a solution that is so much more than just a product on a page, which you can kind of passively take it or leave it. I think the best brands really understand that customers are looking for a transformation in their lives, and any product applies to the same rule of thinking. Even if it's like a hairbrush, right? You've got a problem that you're trying to solve, and it's a race of who can solve that problem in the biggest, most impactful way. Those are the people that are going to win. And I think that you really need to be creative about who you're serving and how you can provide value in the biggest possible way. And that feeds into, and this is stuff I know we're probably going to get to, but from a unit economics point of view, if you come in with a product which is viewed as a commodity, that's how the market's going to respond to it. And I think that you need to make advertising make sense today in 2025. You need to be thinking, how can we deliver the biggest value in the market, not how can we make our discount as low as possible.
I think what was really interesting for me when getting you on kind of for this first season is you've worked with so many brands. And I feel like you have got such a great holistic view on things. And I'm in awe of how you think. So I just really want to go back to what you were saying, winning. What does winning look like? Is it, because I know you get into the weeds, right? And you're about to explain to everyone what that means. I'm really excited for that. But, is winning, are you profitable on first purchase? Are you profitable in the retention? What do you think winning is now?
Yeah, I think the brands that win, if you want to call it that, it's a really bundled term, and I think it's really important to unbundle these things. So I think fundamentally for a DC brand to succeed in this space, it means that they can acquire customers in a way that pays back profit to the business quickly. Fundamentally, that's what the game is, that D2C e-commerce is, and that's what it's all about. And so whether you want to call it retention or growth or kind of look at specific channels to drive those things, fundamentally successful brands that are able to scale know their true costs and understand their payback window on a really fundamental and clear level. And that's what allows them to fund ads. And that, I think, it's a lens of understanding the real core first principles of growth and the levers that you can pull to actually make that happen.
But it's interesting because you've got such a great view on this because you've been in all the calls with all the big brands. It's 40 plus, isn't it? Around that. And what do you keep hearing kind of coming up in those conversations? Is there something that you kind of realise this is what a lot of this is? They'll say this is the problem, but actually no, I think it's this. In your opinion?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think that similar problems can arise, and oftentimes there's a perception about like what the right solution is because you kind of have heard somebody on LinkedIn say it. And it's really difficult. It's so difficult because everyone wants to sell you a solution, and everyone has different layers of experience in different industries, and sometimes kind of correlation and causation are different. Like you could have done something working with a brand, and the brand scaled super quickly. It doesn't mean what you did was right, but those things just happen to kind of coincide. And I think that's why it's so important to sort of see at a big enough volume, actually, all else being equal, what were the commonalities?
Yeah.
And so I think the things that you hear time and time again, these won't be a surprise to brand owners or agencies, but advertising costs always increase. We need to improve our retention to make up for that. Wider economic issues like whatever it is, tariffs or other threats to the business or competitors, these are all going to be common themes. And I think fundamentally it is going to become increasingly difficult to block out the noise. Like there's an enormous amount of noise for brands at the moment in terms of what AI they should adopt or how they should approach, like with new technology, there's constantly new things they can test or they can try. I think that the fundamentals are that you need to understand your unit economics and get a clear view of like your customer dynamic of how quickly they're going to come back and buy again, which is going to improve contribution margin. But fundamentally, what are the kinds of customers you're attracting? What are the sort of products that they buy? How can you bundle together different products that you have into a wider solution that solves their problem as effectively as possible? You want to provide as much value to the problem they have as quickly as possible. That's the name of the game.
But it's interesting because I can imagine for a lot of founders, when you say unit economics, they probably run for the hills. How do you kind of go through that process with someone? You're like, right, do you sit down and say, look, let's just map out everything? How does that look like?
Yeah, so I think there's some really basic assumptions that you need to look at. And they're kind of different layers of depth or accuracy that you can look at. Fundamentally, your cost to acquire a customer versus your lifetime value is the fundamental engine of growth. When it comes to things like lifetime value, that ratio and looking at that on a cohort basis was actually something that was really popularized through SaaS and through tech. And I think that D2C kind of took that and sort of looked at it in the same way. And things as fundamental as looking at lifetime value, oftentimes brands just look at that, how much a customer is spending with us, like how much revenue we're driving per customer per month. And they don't even subtract things like how much the products cost, because those dashboards weren't even needed in SaaS because there was no cost of goods. So it was, so you have these ratios which are thrown around, like, we need a 3-to-1 ratio, and that's off top line spend. And so if you're kind of working on that assumption, you'll find that things look like they're going kind of well, and then you speak to your CFO at the end of the year, end of the quarter, and they're like, we've got no money. And it's amazing how these basic assumptions aren't challenged. And so you kind of see a dashboard in like Lifetime or Triple Whale and you think, we're doing great. But you need to really be asking these questions of, is this how much profit we're making back from these customers over this time?
Yeah, but why? Why are they not being tackled, these assumptions, in the organisations that you've worked with and you've come in from your old agency life? And I know you're going towards consultancy now. But why are they not being tackled? Are they just hard conversations that people do not want to have? Or there's some truths that they don't want to have to deal with?
I don't think there's any ill intention. I think that part of the blame should be put on the structure of marketing teams.
Okay.
So oftentimes marketing teams, the way it works is that you'll have a senior leadership team, and then underneath that you'll have channel owners, and their goal is to basically optimize for channel metrics. So, I spent a lot of time in email and SMS, so you're kind of trained to look at improving open rates and deliverability and click rate and those sorts of things, and all of your focus is on improving those in your individual channel silo so that you can optimize for performance. Inherently in channel metrics, you'll find that they are always going to be biased. And this is true not just with email, but also if you look at paid ads, for example, they're going to have their own siloed attribution. And so they're going to look just own it at their own engagement, so like view or click. And they're basically going to say, if someone engaged with this ad, I even saw the other day, I don't know how true this was, but someone was saying that liking paid ads was kind of counting towards attribution in some way. Like loads of crazy stuff. And basically, if you just optimize for these single metrics, even if you optimize for things like CPA, oftentimes this won't tie back. And same with email, this won't tie back to actually improving how much customers are spending and how much incremental profit they're driving. So for example, if you're on email and your goal is maybe attributed email in a Klaviyo account, okay, well, out of all the levers I have to play with as an email marketer, I could just say, all right, well, how much discount should we push? Well, we do 50% off. That performed better than 40% off last week. So let's run that. It performs better. I can show in my end of month report that email attributed revenue went up. And then at no point is there a feedback loop with a CFO or someone who's actually looking at the profit and loss sheet and saying, hey, do you know we actually lost money on that campaign? But actually you just get a pat on the back because your channel grew. And I think that this is a hugely misunderstood thing that really we don't get those right feedback loops in teams.
This is interesting because I feel like this is getting to an interesting point now where the short versus long term, where you could be doing really well in your channel, but you said if you slap on 60% discounts, you're going to look really good in numbers.
Yep.
And I feel like what you're saying is brands need to build the structures where it's more, they're not siloed, they're talking to each other.
Yep.
So would you say that if you're a D2C founder and they're approaching email for the first time, what recommendations would you say, look, this is what I would suggest you should do? What does that look like?
Yeah, 100%. I think in a lot of ways, you shouldn't forget about how you grew the list in the first place. I think this is a really basic assumption that I think people miss. So as soon as you hand off email to somebody, or even if you're owning it yourself, it's so easy to get caught up in the fact that I've got this list of customers that are basically free to access. And often the case is that you paid for these leads, and the cost to acquire them isn't zero if you sell them through email. Actually, they came from paid ads, and those ads were probably optimized for purchase. So sometimes when you look at offers, for example, you might say, well, compared to our paid ads, we're happy to just do 60% off because these are just free customers that we can just take. And it's like, well, no, you paid to get them on the list. So
nothing is free in this world. I do believe, if with lead magnets, right? If it's free playbook, no, you're giving them your email, right? Nothing's free,
Yeah, you had to get these people on site. They had to sign up. They have some sort of buying intent, and even if they were free, the value that they come in to first acquire them is going to massively impact their behaviour onwards. So if someone comes in, and I've seen this at a larger scale, even shifting. So there was a brand that I worked with in the past, and they had a £8 trial intro offer, and they even tested moving it from £8 to £7, and the LTV on the customers that came. So it went from that kind of low trial to sort of £40-50 AOV ongoing. Even shifting at £1 difference crushed LTV because the quality of customers. It was just one of those thresholds, that tipping point of the people that really found that a big enough bargain to just be a chancer were way less willing to go on going. And so it really can make such a difference. So if you give away these huge discounts just to get people through the door, you'll find that actually there was that sweet spot where now they're not willing to pay full price ever again. And you're actually never going to make margin on these customers.
That's interesting. So in your opinion then, what is the role of retention kind of in 2026? What needs to be, you're starting in January, let's say, you've had a good New Year's, a bit boozy, or not, you've had your space goods or whatever product you're on. What are you saying to them? Right, this is where we need to go. What does that look like? What does retention look like now in the future of where you think it's going?
Yeah, I think more than ever, you need to be designing customer journeys that make sense and product journeys that make sense. So I think take a step back, look at your product range, look at the customers that you serve.
Yep.
Analyze the customers that produce outsized returns. So you'll see if you stack rank your customers on Shopify by spend, you'll see that the top 20% spent 80% of your total revenue.
Cool.
And you can start talking to these customers, understanding how your products fit into their life. And I'd work backwards from there. You want to optimize from the people that your products and your brand click with the most. And then think from a product roadmap perspective, if you've got one hero SKU or maybe you have 2 or 3 others in that lineup, try and understand in as deep a way as possible how that complements their life and how it makes the most sense, and use that messaging throughout. So both paid ads and on email and other channels surrounding as well. Try and breadcrumb and lay out in their lives how this makes sense and bundle those products together, and just understand that from an entry point perspective, how can we tailor the products that we have to these customers in a way that delivers them as much value as possible.
This may sound like a bit of a stupid question, but I've always wondered, do you think customers can feel when they're being over-optimized? You know how when you get, when it's like a really hyper-personalised message comes to you, like, oh, I feel really creeped out by that. I know, like, oh, it's your birthday, have 20% discount. I mean, do you think there's a limit, or there's a line that you can kind of, as a brand, if you over-optimise, you actually, I don't know, you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think that shoppers, you can't underestimate how transparent the way that marketers operate is today. I think everybody knows the game. They know that if you're on a website and you get an email follow-up, that you're being tracked. I think that from a brand perspective and also from a customer relationship perspective, there has to be this really fine line between kind of like, we saw you looking at this thing, which is literally the language that brands use in emails, and also being effortlessly useful. And I think that personalization, when done right, is a combination of timing and relevance.
Yeah.
So if you were to buy a product which has like a no-brainer complementary product, you can provide that at just the right time. And I think that in those ways, when it's done really well, it feels supernatural. And that's when I think conversion rate is the highest and it feels the most enjoyable. So for example, people say they hate ads. Like, I hate seeing ads. I hate seeing like Netflix ads or Facebook ads. But actually, if you see an ad for something which was just the thing you needed, at that moment, you didn't hate that ad. And so I think that's how it needs to be thought about, which is if I bought a new phone case because I was absolutely gutted that I smashed my new phone like a month ago and I just got a replacement, I'm like, never going to make that happen again. Just bought my new phone case. And then I get a follow-up immediately which just says, by the way, we would hate for you to have your nice new phone case, which will absolutely defend the back of your glass case of your phone. But actually, did you know that 82% of broken screens wouldn't have been saved by just the case alone, and that a screen protector will solve that problem if it falls on raised rocks, for example. And you think, oh, I'm so glad that they mentioned that because I would have been really pissed off if that happened.
So it's interesting in a way. It's like when they're bought from you, if it makes sense as an upsell, it's also probably the best time to sell to them again. Like if you've just bought a bike for the first time, let's say you've got into kind of competitive cycling, you probably want, the helmet, the gloves.
A new lock,
So it's interesting. So it's kind of actually, when you're actually personalising it, the offer, make it make sense.
100%.
Like what would you, if you've bought, this new coffee supplement, what would they actually probably want? A new mug? With your, they probably want a nice new mug or a nice thing to froth it up or whatever. You can tell I'm a seasoned coffee drinker. But you know what I mean, right?
100%. I think that would be another thing that if I were to have one sort of line of advice, stop thinking about tech, start with the customer, and you'll figure it out. Don't think we've seen a new app which could be useful. I would say start with the customer need and work backwards because most operators, brand owners or marketing teams, they are very smart, very agile, that you will figure out the how, but it's the what and the why, which you should really be focusing on, rather than reverse engineering a tool into a need. Just think about exactly what you just said, which is, how would you think, when you just bought your new bike, I didn't even think about the fact that my lock isn't going to be good enough or that my insurance wouldn't even be happy if I didn't have a good enough lock for this bike. And you'll be so relieved to have a relevant product rather than annoyed.
So when you're ideating about retention, right, and you're looking at tactics, where do you look? What brands are you taking inspiration from? Everyone steals like an artist or whatever the saying is. How are you going about that? Where do you find those tactics? The nuance, the nitty-gritty, they're playing it in a poker game and they've given you the card and it's do this. Where do you find that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think following all the top performing growth leaders and brands is a great place to look for inspiration. The Daphne Tiedemans, the Frankie Athills, and also the fastest growing brands in the space. You see Grunz's meteoric rise and you just think, okay, well, there's got to be something to learn here. And my favorite thing to do in those instances is really to be really reductive about it because, like I said, I think there's just such an enormous amount of noise in D2C at the moment. So I love looking at the winners and thinking, what are they not actually doing or worrying about? And sometimes there's a huge amount of things that they actually aren't doing and they're still able to succeed. And that's why I think that there's some real basic fundamental things that the fastest growth brands do correctly. And obviously then you can look at their funnels, their paid ads, their emails, learn from the growth teams inside of those and kind of work backwards from the commonalities. I think more and more just trying to unpick what is the common thread between all of these different pieces and how can you apply it to your own business?
But if you had to give me the ultimate common denominator that you've seen, because you've got the wide range of brand knowledge, you've worked with some of the biggest brands, what would you say the common denominator is, in your opinion?
Yeah. I think there's great intro offer.
Okay.
High price point, sticky product.
Nice.
Those are the things. I think if you haven't got an amazing introductory offer that really makes you stand out and that convinces prospects that this is like category of one style product, like I could get a cheaper version of this on Amazon, it just wouldn't do the same thing. Yeah. Like you have to build that moat around you as a brand and as a product to really convince people that this is the secret sauce, like this is the thing. And sometimes that is a combination of like a brand moat, which is like the reason for it existing, but also I think fundamentally in the product offering itself that needs to exist. And then I think fundamentally retention comes off the back of a product. Like if you, like the brutal truth is if you had absolutely no communications whatsoever outside of post-purchase, but you had a product which had like no brainer use case, you literally can't live without it, it needs to be replenished on an ongoing basis, you will have people coming back and ordering it again because they need it. You can supplement those things and improve usability of a product through thoughtful communications. That's really important. Relevant upsells, product education, especially in the supplement space where you can't necessarily feel the impact of a product. The priming and perception of communication around how it's working, what it's doing for you, what the ingredients do, the scientific backing, building, again, that brand moat around lifestyle and like maybe habit building around a particular pain point. And then finally, sticky product I think is just so key. So if you look at a niche like pet food, for example,
they do great when the recession's on. By the way, go make a pet food brand.
Absolutely, and I think it's one of those things like start backwards from the product because you can't, you sell somebody, like a spade. Maybe they need to shovel some snow or something. They're not going to buy you another one from you every month. And I think that you need to understand that from a business economics point of view. The product has to make sense around the model and not the other way around. Just because you wish you had someone buying a product from you every single month doesn't mean they need it. So really make sure that you work backwards from a product development point of view and engineer the customer journey around that.
But then isn't that when the clever brands, what they'll do is like, they'll kind of make limited edition spades, or they'll do brand collab spades, or they'll do where they make it where you want to buy another spade, even though you don't need another spade. I love the spade analogy; it's great.
Yeah, no, I think it's true, but that's where it gets sort of shoehorned in, right? Okay. So yes, you do get these kind of collector style products and brands, but I think at their best they complement a kind of hero product. So you think about like a coffee brand, for example, they might have new limited edition, different varieties. So I wanted my coffee ongoing anyway, but to keep me engaged, keep me interested, maybe they've got new specialty blends, they work with different farmers, maybe they have limited edition merchandise or things that you need. But ultimately, for most people, you don't need a new espresso machine every month. You need to really think about it from that perspective and stack it on top of what already makes sense rather than trying to really kind of drive an uphill battle, which is like a product which doesn't need an ongoing usage.
Yeah. So Meta are wanting more creatives than ever. Do you think brands that you've seen them work with, are they getting bottlenecked by that process, in your opinion?
100%. I think it's one of the areas that brands struggle the most with, which is not just looking at competitors, but understanding what's working for them. What I often see is brands just trying to iterate over and over again on the same concepts, and sometimes it's really easy to get those blinders on and miss like, what are these big swings that we could be taking? Because
there's a big swing over there. I didn't see it.
Yeah, because again, it goes back to what is the actual reality of marketing teams, which is you have these operators who are sort of taught, here are your incremental metrics that you need to keep budging up and up and up, which is these kind of small iterations on things. And I think what gets lost is like that balance between, it is an 80-20, roughly speaking, that you should be putting maybe 20 or even 10% into these really heavy hitting out there kind of attempts. And I think that that's where there's this real need at creative diversity, always getting a fresh look at top performing perspectives in your niche and also other niches, which maybe is where the biggest opportunity is, because if you see something working in another space and it has untapped potential in yours, but the concept can still be applied, I think there's a really, really powerful and actually from an execution point of view, yes, things like AI do speed these things up, but from a strategic and directive point of view, I think that's what teams really are looking for at the moment.
Fine, I agree. I think we're living in an interesting moment, especially with AI now. So my last two questions for you. What are your predictions regarding AI in the e-com space in the next couple of years? Where do you think it's going, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think if you look at all the big tech players, the trends are really clear, which is execution is becoming commoditized.
Yep.
So at every level possible, all of the busy work is being taken up. Anything that could have been written down into an SOP, like these are the rules of this task which needs to be executed.
Go do it.
Exactly. It's increasingly being given to agents to do that. And I think that this should be actually a really exciting thing for marketers and for anyone in the e-commerce space, because it basically means that your most valuable contributions, which are strategic, not kind of hands-on labor, are where you're going to be spending more of your energy.
Yeah.
And I think that, essentially that the flywheel of iteration and testing is only going to increase and speed up.
Yep.
And what's going to be left is the best strategists are going to be the ones that win.
Yep.
And I think it's going to be increasingly important to adopt AI in a really bullish way when it comes to execution and ideation, but making sure that from a strategic perspective, you're investing in that area as much as possible to really make sure that you're applying these tools in the right way. Because obviously you can sprint twice as fast, but if you're going in the wrong direction, then it's not very useful. So making sure that you apply that leverage in the right way is going to be super important.
So, my last question. In a world where, probably like me, you're doom scrolling emails and meta ads, where do you find peace?
In what sense?
In the sense of how do you get away from it all when it gets... Because again, look, I feel like in this industry, burnout is a big problem.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to keep up with the Joneses. There's so many trends coming in. You've got the what was it, like the that strip thing, the thing like the new like format, right? And everyone was like, we've got to get on this. And so how do you find peace? How do you kind of step away? What's your approach to that? Yeah,
100%. I think getting that quiet, like I said, I think noise is probably one of the biggest threats to teams in e-com at the moment. Getting outside, talking to people.
Touching grass.
Touching grass. It's a cliche for a reason. I think it's so true. I really think that the most valuable insights come from those like shower thoughts type scenarios where you're actually just really far away from what you're working on. Yeah. Like close the laptop, go talk to people in diverse industries and spaces. And like,
it's so true.
Seriously sitting across from people and just actually being shocked by how similar the problems other people are facing and gaining that perspective. I think oftentimes I'm a big fan of like Greg McKeown's Essentialism book and like the one thing, that concept of like if we kind of forgot about all the millions of things we're doing right now and solve for just one thing, the easier it is to distill that and get away from the noise, I think the better. So sometimes I think quiet is really underutilized. Like turn off the podcasts, stop kind of trying to copy people so constantly just for 5 minutes and just like take a breath, look at your business and just think, what would be the one thing that is constraining us right now and how can we get through that? And whether that is increasing speed of iteration or trying to understand what new products you need to release, talk to your customers, be in the business. And sometimes I think, just kind of taking stock, realizing where you can put your focus, where that's most valuable, and just tuning out the noise of it.
Fantastic. I mean, James, I want to say thank you so much for this episode. I think this is I'm going to be a thing with a tactical masterclass in just looking at the unit economics of a business. I think a lot of people overlook this. So thank you so much for coming on.
Pleasure.